Picture this, a dirt path winding through the green highlands of Kenya, thousands of feet above the sea. The air is thin and cool. A group of children is running along it in the early morning light, school bags bouncing, breath steady, climbing a hill that would leave most grown adults doubled over and gasping, and not one of them is tired. One small girl drifts to the front of the group, light on her feet, barely seeming to touch the ground, as if the altitude and the climb cost her nothing at all. She is maybe 9 years old. Nobody formally taught her to run like that, or did they? By the end of this video, you'll know the 3 things Kenyan parents and their culture do to produce the greatest distance runners the world has ever seen. And the third one is the one almost every parent outside Kenya gets completely backwards. One small region of Kenya, the highlands around the Rift Valley, has produced more marathon and long-distance champions than entire continents combined. Eliud Kipchoge, the greatest marathoner in history, the first human to run a marathon under 2 hours, David Rudisha, Brigid Kosgei, a pipeline of world record holders so deep and so unbroken that other countries have flown in scientists for decades trying to figure out the secret. Not one golden generation, not one lucky era, a continuous flood of champions year after year from a handful of villages most people couldn't find on a map. So, what is actually happening up in those hills? What do Kenyan parents know that the rest of the world doesn't? It starts before any track, before any coach ever clocks a time. It starts with the road and with the mountain it climbs. In the rural highlands, especially around towns like Iten and Eldoret, children don't get dropped off at school. They run to school and back, sometimes many kilometers each way every single day without ever calling it training, without thinking of it as preparation for anything. And here's the thing, they are doing it at altitude, more than 7,000 feet above sea level, where the air holds less oxygen. A body that grows up moving in that thin air quietly builds an engine that flatland children never develop. More of the tiny vessels that carry oxygen. A heart and lungs trained from childhood to do more with less. The legs learn the long, efficient, economical stride of distance running years before anyone introduces a stopwatch. None of it feels like work. It's just how you get from here to there. That is the first thing Kenyan parents do, though they would never describe it as a parenting strategy. They simply live in a place and in a way that makes their children's bodies extraordinary before any coach ever sees them. Think about what that means in terms of early development. The research on endurance is consistent on this point. Years of natural, unstructured movement at altitude, day after day from a very young age, builds an aerobic foundation that is almost impossible to manufacture later in life. Not interval sessions on a track, not a treadmill in a gym, just real distance, over real hills, in thin mountain air, repeated thousands of times before a child even understands what the Olympics are. Kenyan children get that every morning on the way to school. They get it again on the way home. That's not a program. That's geography and culture doing the work of an elite training plan before training plans exist in a child's world. The mountain road is the first coach, and it costs nothing. It is available to every child in those hills, but the road and the altitude alone don't explain it. Other countries have mountains and rural poverty, and children who walk for miles. So, something else is happening here. This is where the camps come in. Around Iten, a small town that calls itself the home of champions, there are training camps where the best runners in the world live and train together, simply communally. Often in modest rooms with shared meals and early bedtimes, and the entire region is built around them. Children grow up seeing world record holders jogging past their homes at dawn. They see local men and women leave for a marathon in Europe or America and come back having earned more than their families could dream of. Money that builds a house, sends siblings to school, changes everything. Now pause for a second and ask yourself, when is the last time the most admired, most successful person in your child's neighborhood was a distance runner? In these Kenyan towns, that is simply the truth of the place. Running is what football is in Brazil, what sprinting is in Jamaica. It is the dream that feels achievable because you watched it happen to someone from your own village, someone your family knows by name. Eliud Kipchoge trains on those same roads and still lives a modest life among the people who raised him. The champion is not a face on a distant screen. The champion is the man who ran past your gate this morning. And Kenyan parents raise their children right inside that world. That visibility changes what a child believes is possible. When a kid grows up watching ordinary people from ordinary homes become national heroes through running, something shifts inside them. The identity of being a runner becomes personally available. Not a far-off fantasy, but a fact of the immediate world, something a person just like them has already done. You can't want what you genuinely cannot picture. In the Kenyan highlands, the picture is everywhere. On the road at dawn, at the local races, in the new house the champion built for his mother. That constant living visibility is the second thing Kenyan parents give their children. They raise them inside a culture where being the strongest runner on the mountain is the highest form of local pride. The culture does the motivating. The parents don't have to manufacture inspiration. It already lives in the air, right alongside the thinness of it. Now, before we get to the third pillar, a quick moment on food. You may have heard Kenyan runners credit their diet, and there's something worth taking seriously there, even if it's not a laboratory secret. The traditional Highland diet leans heavily on ugali, a simple, dense maize staple, along with beans, vegetables, rice, and plenty of sweet, milky tea. It is high in natural carbohydrate, simple, and eaten in big portions to fuel big days of movement. No supplement mythology, no engineered recovery shakes, just whole traditional food prepared the way it has been for generations. Is ugali the secret? No, but strong bodies built on honest food, running real distances through real mountains, is a more powerful foundation than most purpose-built development programs ever achieve. Now we get to the third thing, the one that surprises people. The one that contradicts almost everything Western parenting culture currently tells you to do. Here's where outside assumptions about Kenya collapse entirely. People look at this country's running dominance and assume the parents are hovering, drilling their kids, managing athletic careers from age 6 with private coaches and structured programs. The opposite is true. Kenyan parents let their children struggle, for real, with real hardship, real chores, real responsibility, and no cushioning waiting on the other side. A Highland childhood is not soft. There's water to carry, livestock to mind, long distances to cover on foot, work to be done before and after school. When a child finds something hard, nobody rushes in to remove the difficulty. The child has to meet it, carry it, and decide for themselves to keep going. That is not neglect. That is development. Psychologists who study resilience have a name for it, productive adversity, and the research is clear on what it does. Children who grow up meeting genuine hardship early, who carry real weight without a protective layer of adult management, develop something that cannot be directly taught. They develop the capacity to suffer toward a goal. And distance running, more than almost any human activity, is precisely that. It is the willingness to stay in discomfort, mile after mile, long after the body begs to stop, and to keep choosing to continue. A child raised to meet hardship instead of being shielded from it already owns the single most important quality a marathoner can have, long before they ever pin on a race number. Kenyan parents trust that process. They don't protect their children from difficulty. They let difficulty quietly build the engine that running will one day demand. Here's the real power of that philosophy. A child who has never had to push through anything hard doesn't know they can. A child who has carried water up a hill at dawn, who has walked further than they wanted to 100 times, who has met discomfort and kept moving anyway, that child has built something internal and permanent, the deep, lived knowledge that hard things can be endured and outlasted. And that is what the Kenyan system produces at every stage of development, from the mountain road to the local race to the Olympic final in front of the world. The effort is always real. The hardship is always real. The endurance is earned long before anyone is watching. And that reality is the forge that produces champions. So here's your practical takeaway. This week, stop removing the hard things from your child's day. Let them carry the heavy bag. Let them walk the longer way. Let them finish the difficult task without you stepping in to make it easier or to do it for them. And when they hit the moment where it gets uncomfortable and they want to quit, resist the urge to rescue them. Instead, stay close, stay calm, and ask them one question. Can you do just a little bit more? Then give them the space to find out that the answer is yes. That single experience, discovering that they can keep going past the point they wanted to stop, is what Kenyan childhood hands a child 1,000 times over. Not with a training plan, not with a schedule, with trust, with real effort, with a quiet, unshakable belief that their child can handle hard things. Kenya doesn't produce the world's greatest distance runners despite the hardship of those highland villages. They produce them because of it. The thin air that strengthens every breath, the long roads that have to be run, the champions living right down the lane as living proof, and a childhood that never pretended hard things weren't hard, but trusted a child to rise to meet them anyway. That is the system. And it all begins on a mountain road at dawn with a barefoot child climbing a hill that would break an adult. Not because someone designed a program for them, but because in those hills, going the distance is simply what it means to grow up.